30 minutes past the hour, you're watching Al Jazeera. Our main story, the crisis in Libya. Here are just some of the main developments. Italy says that claims that 1,000 people have been killed in Libya are credible. The country's foreign minister, Franco Frattini, expects up to 300,000 refugees will head to Italy, and he's described it as an exodus of biblical proportions. The first Western city is now reportedly under the control of protesters. A witness says that 6 people were killed and 200 injured in Misurata. That's around 120 kilometers west of the capital, Tripoli. European Union governments, meanwhile, have agreed to prepare possible sanctions against Libya in response to Gaddafi's violent crackdown. Proposed measures could include visa bans, freezing assets, and an arms embargo. Meanwhile, thousands of people are fleeing Libya. More than a dozen countries have sent planes to help their citizens leave. Turkey is carrying out the largest evacuation operation in its history. An army general has told Al Jazeera a Libyan Air Force pilot refused to bomb the city of Benghazi, choosing instead to eject from his plane. And the general said his forces are backing the anti-government protesters. And Libya's former justice minister has told a Swedish newspaper that he has proof Gaddafi personally ordered the Lockerbie bombing, which killed 270 people in 1988. Well, Nouri al-Masmari was part of Muammar Gaddafi's inner circle, and he spoke to Al Jazeera earlier and explained why he deserted Libya's leader.
Now what is happening in Libya is genocide. It's mass killing. I mean, come on. Either you are a diabolic man that you stay with this man, or either you are a human being and get out. And that's what we have done. The only thing we are going out and we are joining our people. And we will fight with them. We don't care. We die today, we die tomorrow, we die the day after, but one day Libya will be free. And we say our souls, our blood is sold for Libya.
Well, events in Libya are being watched very closely in most of the world's major oil companies. Since Libya came in from the dark of international isolation, that was nearly a decade ago, it's invested its wealth around the world. And now companies and countries are under pressure to come clean about their dealings with Gaddafi. Banu Batnagar reports.
What does the Juventus Football Club, Italy's biggest bank, and the country's biggest oil company have in common? All have a Libyan connection. After the oil-rich country renounced weapons of mass destruction in 2003, it's been the darling of the West, managing to secure multi-billion-dollar deals, make investments right around the world, even secure the early release of the convicted Lockerbie bomber. Now, from Washington to London to Rome, it all seems a bit premature, and Libya's former colonial overlord Italy stands to lose the most. The Libyan Foreign Investment Fund owns 7.5% of Juventus, one of the world's most successful football teams. Libya is the largest shareholder in Italy's biggest bank, UniCredit. Then there's the Italian oil company Eni, which has been drilling in Libya since 1959, longer than Gaddafi has been in power. And 2% of Italy's biggest defense and security firm, Finmeccanica, is also owned by Libya. Italy's Silvio Berlusconi and Muammar Gaddafi signed a 2008 friendship treaty in which their two countries promised billions of dollars in mutual investments. Since then, Libyan and Italian interests have become more entrenched, and now at a time of uncertainty in Libya, concern is mounting in many boardrooms. But Italy isn't alone. Gaddafi's overtures with the outside world stretch far beyond the Mediterranean. Take a look at this list of all the known companies and the countries where they're based with significant oil deals in Libya. They all stand much to lose as the situation there deteriorates.
I assure you that American oil companies and British as well as Italian are involved in Libya, and they signed contracts in the last 2 years.
Relations with the UK improved back in 2004. As then Prime Minister Tony Blair shook hands with Gaddafi, Anglo-Dutch oil giant Shell signed a multi-million-dollar gas exploration deal off the Libyan coast. Fast forward a few years and British defence companies were allowed to sell projectile launchers and crowd control ammunition to Libya. Now though, facing scrutiny over the possibility British weapons could be used against the Libyan people, the government has cancelled at least 8 arms export licences. And while the US has been critical of Britain cozying up to Gaddafi's regime, Washington has allowed firms to quietly conduct business as usual.
remember that the Americans are up to their neck in their involvement in Libya.
Libya's wealth and Gaddafi's family have become irreversibly entangled in the global economy. What happens in that country and to the regime will have reverberations right across the world. Banu Bhatnagar, Al Jazeera.
Dr. Sami Hermes is a visiting fellow at St. Anthony's College in Oxford University, and his research has included the anthropology of violence, and he's also worked for various organizations, including Human Rights Watch, as well as the United Nations Development Programme, and will join us now from London. Thanks for sticking around there on Al Jazeera. Last time we spoke, you said that you wanted to see targeted action towards Gaddafi. We heard Obama speak just a short while ago. Are you happy with what he said?
You know, I would like to laugh, but I'm not happy. I think after Tunisia and after Egypt, there can be no more cynicism. And for me to sit here and analyze his speech would be very cynical. He had some nice words. President Obama generally does have nice words, and he condemned. And as I said earlier, you know, this is Libya's people's revolution, an uprising. The killing started on Monday. It's Wednesday, and he comes out on Wednesday, and he says he doesn't actually tell us anything except to condemn. He hasn't actually. He says we're studying the different options, and as you've rightly pointed out, he didn't even mention Gaddafi's name. And
he said he's asked to prepare his administration. He said he's asked his administration to prepare the full range of options. What do you think he's talking about there?
You know, while people are dying, the world's greatest power is preparing. I guess I've just questioned that kind of diplomacy, and I think there should be some stronger measures. And like I said, it's not about sanctions or closing borders or things like that, which have long-term impacts. We're talking about. Your correspondent, I think, said this earlier. You know, freezing assets of the ruling family. Is something very tangible, something very direct, coming out with strong statements to the weapons manufacturers and oil companies. Of course, you know, you and I probably both know that that's not something he can do because he'd upset, the lobbyists back home. So, I think, sorry, one last thing. I think we should really think about what's going on behind the scenes right now, because there's a lot of stalling. And while they're stalling, Gaddafi is hiding his money. Sorry, that was the last
Well, I'd like to get your take on what's happening on the ground there in Libya. We now hear reports that Misrata, which is in the west of the country, is reportedly in the hands of the people. Now, this is very different because earlier we had heard just the eastern parts of the country. How significant do you think that is?
This is very significant because